that we are the best versions of ourselves when we are on vacation, and so we want to carefully select the destination where we get to reunite with what truly matters. So out of this testing, Life at Your Pace was created. So I will read this to you, if I can see. The world forces us to move at a pace that doesn't always make us comfortable. We yearn to get back to our pace of life as fast or as slow as we wish. We want to get control of our lives back. And Williamsburg is the place to do just that, because your vacation is your vacation. You want to sleep in and have breakfast for lunch? Go for it. You want to play golf all day, every day, for an entire week? It's your vacation. You want to hop in a canoe and see where the James River takes you without a paddle? Then head to Williamsburg and experience Life at Your Pace. Life at Your Pace has been at play for roughly 3 years now. Our 2023 media strategy focuses on evolving markets, whether they are markets that we have been in for a historic period of time or recent expansion markets. We want to continue to evolve those. We want to lean in on what's called lower funnel booking support. So this is a digital advertisement that will then say, now book at your pace, and start to look at really that transactional. So there's the upper funnel where that is really more brand related. So that's television commercials, out of home executions, and then that digital display is that lower funnel that prompts people to book now. Looking at our key performance indicators and what life is like with a cookieless environment at play. And as a reminder, cookies are placed on advertisements that then follow the consumer path. So currently we can tell you if somebody booked on an ad and then went on to book travel. In theory, that will go away in 2024. So we're working with vendors to refine what a post-cookie environment looks like. We want to saturate, influence, elevate, establish, and maintain. We are currently in 23 designated market areas. New this year, we launched Atlanta, and we launched with digital-only advertising in Atlanta, similar to what we did when we launched New York 2 years ago. We want to see what performs well before we commit to the high cost of television advertising in that market. We're already seeing some strong gains. 3 years ago, we launched Cleveland and Columbus. 2 years ago, we launched Boston and New York, and Atlanta is our newest market. And as a reminder, the markets that we were in historically were primarily nearby drive markets for us. We're reaching beyond that. It's included still, but we're reaching beyond that because we know the further you travel, the longer you stay and the more money you spend. So that's why we are kind of going into some of these further distances. We're focusing on active mature couples, Gen X and millennial couples, and Gen X and millennial families. That is our target audience. Depending on the market, we're targeting a household income level of anywhere between $125 and $175 a year. And again, that depends on the market and how that scales. This year, we launched our ad campaign a full 6 weeks in advance of prior years. On January 2nd, we flipped the switch and we were in market. Our flight strategy is where 55% of our overall advertising budget is spent within the months of January and April, and then starts to taper down for the remaining months of the year. Spring and summer are our busiest seasons. If we don't have a strong spring and summer, we will not see growth for the year overall. This is a little bit about what our flighting strategy looks like. About 39% of our budget goes towards television, 26% goes towards digital media. So that's the difference again between that upper funnel and lower funnel. So that's roughly about half is where we're putting our dollars. We want to convert as many people as we want to expose people to the destination for the first time and put it into their consideration set. You'll see that digital media goes on all year long, as does blog support, paid search, and paid social. Our influencer program, we're pretty light in January, just because most spots in January aren't the most photogenic on the planet. And so when we do invest that 4% of our budget to our social media influencer program, we want to make sure that the backdrop is as stunning as possible. So let me show you a little bit about how Life at Your Pace comes to life. We have 3 television spots. We target culture questers, seers and doers, and simple strivers. So let's start with culture questers. I don't know if there's volume for the sound, but there is music to our television ads. And every time I hear it when I'm traveling somewhere. So again, this is the Culture Questers spot, really focuses on our cultural assets throughout the destination. Here is Simple Strivers. So things to see and do that don't require a ton of planning. All right. And let's go into seers and doers. So these are our 3 television advertisements. And then let's look at some examples of what our spring and summer digital creative look like. And you'll see how Life at Your Pace carries over within our digital advertising as well. Several different formats here. We switch the creative up in both the fall and holiday season to promote the many things to see and do throughout those months as well. The leaves turn orange and red here, just like they do everywhere else, and there's a wonderful reason to escape to the destination, whether it's pumpkin patches or seeing the destination against a different backdrop. Holiday, everybody knows how beautiful the town is during the holidays, so. One of our tactics are called content programs or content partnerships. And so over the course of the last 18 months, we have launched 3 different programs. First was National Geographic. And the idea around National Geographic was to look at the science behind the living history experience that exists here. So to really expose people to the archaeological digs that are taking place here. Also to our aquaculture. It always amazes me that people don't realize that we're on the water, and my response is the British didn't get here by train. And looking at things like our agricultural amenities too, and so worked with Williamsburg Winery. So as part of this partnership, we had a number of videos, blog pieces, and the like. We also then worked with golf.com, Golf Magazine, and that partnership produced 2 on-site videos, 3 articles. The destination was featured in their subscriber email, and we had some digital display advertising on golf.com. And golf is sort of an untapped opportunity for us. With the many courses in such a short proximity of each other, with architects, very big names, we can really go head to head with any other golf destination on the Eastern Coast. So not that long ago in New York, I actually put that stake in the ground and said, I am going to claim that Williamsburg is the best golf destination on the East Coast, in front of about 35 travel and golf writers in New York. So. And the area's food scene. I don't need to tell anyone in the room what an amazing food scene this area has. And so we partnered with Bon Appetit to tell that story. This produced an on-site article, an on-site video. These all have live links, so if you'd like to watch them afterwards, I'm sure we can make sure that you have the presentations so that you can check those out. But we worked with a food influencer, a food and beverage influencer out of New York City, and he came to Williamsburg to experience 6 different locations throughout the area, ranging from coffee at Mob Jack Bay to Amber Ox. And so you can see here that we were able to elevate our culinary scene in a lot of different channels. And Condé Nast went above and beyond and pushed it out through their other channels like Vogue, Architectural Digest, and the like. So a little bit more about our influencer program. We bring people here, they range from macro influencers, as we call them, who are celebrity types, like Shawn Johnson, who is a former Olympian and Dancing with the Stars contestant, who, by the way, has like more than 2 million followers or something like that, to local influencers who have a micro following but have a very specific subject matter expertise. And so whether it's experience a day in the life of a local or check out our food and beverage scene, we really run the gamut on who we work with. And so this is just a smattering of what the results of these different influencers coming to town look like. We've been able to increase engagement through our social channels, quadruple the number of followers that we have. Our click-through rates have expanded. Time spent on our website has increased. We have 80% of visitors to our website are first-time visitors to our website, and that trend has continued for several years now. So the more we continue to expose consumers to Williamsburg through the eyes of a third-party influencer and sharing it in their own unique way and in a way that's trusted is how we're continuing to share the entire Williamsburg story. And these are just some examples of some of the blog content and posts that we achieve through these various partnerships. And we're really able to get very specific. Out of home, so transit advertising, subway advertising, this is another one of those upper funnel tactics where we're introducing people maybe for the first time to the destination in some of our new markets. And so these are some examples of how Life at Your Pace is used in out of home. Most recently, we launched, and this was just in February, an out-of-home execution that allowed for people to actually participate with it in real time. So I'm going to share a little video of what that looked like. So that's a little taste of an experiential execution that was launched in 3 markets, Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C. Life at Your Pace funnels all the way down into our sales collateral. So you'll see everything from our sell sheets to our brochures to our trade show booth. It's all under the Life at Your Pace umbrella. So everything's looking the same. And it took us a few years to get there, but now we're there, and it's really exciting to see it all come together. We developed a cooperative marketing program about 3 years ago. Again, this speaks to our third goal in ensuring that the destination is utilizing the tourism brand. And so we offer with 4 different partners a one-to-one match on a cooperative ad program. You do have to use our creative, you do have to embrace life at your pace, but then you can click through to your own personal business. If you don't have a website, you can link to your business listing on visitwilliamsburg.com. So again, this is in an effort to ensure that the region is united under Visit Williamsburg's marketing effort. And so key performance indicators, we know that our marketing metrics are strong, and we monitor those on a daily basis. If we have a digital advertising partner and that's not executing the way it should be, we can pull it and we can invest those dollars into a different tactic. And so we're constantly monitoring our marketing performance. We've won more than 20 advertising awards in the past 3 years for Life at Your Pace. And so we know that the marketing's killing it, but let's look at everything else too, right? So let's look at the Q1 comparison to 2019. We used 2019 for a couple of reasons. A, it was pre-pandemic, and B, it was the first year since 2007 that the destination broke 50% occupancy. So 2019 was the best performing year in 12 years. If you look at our year-to-date occupancy, we're nearly 7.5% up over 2019. Our average daily rate, so these are hotel rates, that's up 15%. But the real number here that I want to make sure that we're all paying attention to is the revenue. So RevPAR stands for revenue per available room. We're at an astonishing nearly 42% increase over 2019. So those are very exciting numbers and certainly signify that we not just have rebounded from COVID, we're exceeding the best year we had in 7 years. We, through a variety of data platforms, know exactly where our visitors are coming from, and we use cell phone data for that. So you can see here's a list of our top 10 origin markets. What I want to point out is how quickly New York has jumped up that list. We've only been in New York for 2 years, and now it ranks in one of our top 10 markets. So that's also very exciting to see. What do visitors buy when they're here? These are on-site credit card swipes, and you know, it's what you would expect. It's attractions, outdoor recreation, retail, lodging, and of course, food and beverage. We know what our visitors' household income level is, kind of based on affinity. So we know that roughly 50% of our visitors have a household income level above 100K. So that means that our target household income level is in line with what we're seeing in the destination. We're talking to the right people. So we also conduct an ad effectiveness return on investment study. We have a third-party partner out of Indianapolis called Smari Insights. They represent more than 30 different tourism destinations and state tourism offices throughout the country, and we engage them because we don't want to grade our own homework. And so we want to make sure that we are utilizing a methodology that is in line with what the state of California uses, with what New York City uses. They have a deep bench of benchmarks and that we're really able to capitalize. The methodology for a return on investment study, we conducted 1,700 studies in our key markets and amongst our core demographic who we are targeting. And just as a reminder, we qualify an overnight stay or visit is if you travel at least 50 miles to get here. And so what did we see through this study? We saw that our ad campaign, Life at Your Pace, influenced the length of stay, the number of activities, spending, and trip satisfaction. And you can see here those who were unaware of our advertising stayed fewer nights, they did fewer activities, and they spent much less while they were here than those who had seen our advertising and were inspired to visit because of it. You can also see here that what our impact on image is. So in the orange categories, you can see that those who were unaware ranked us low, below average on unexpected attractions and activities, forward thinking, Black history sites and landmarks, and a place that celebrates diversity. Those who had seen our advertising ranked us much better in those categories. Has unexpected attractions and activities in particular went from below average to good. So, and at the end of the day, how much did we influence in the way of visitor spending? And we know that our advertising influenced close to 431,500 trips, and those visitors spent, and that's a typo, my apologies, $832 million in spending, which provides us with a return on investment of $73 for every $1 we invest in media. So without Visit Williamsburg's advertising, this would not have happened. And we asked that, had you considered Williamsburg as a vacation destination? No. You saw our advertising? Yes. Did it inspire you to book travel? Yes. How long did you stay? How much did you spend? And that's how we get to that figure. We break it down. We do have it broken down by visitor spend per market, age demographic, all of that good stuff. But this is the real high-level slide. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but that's a brief look at 2023's campaign and how 2022 performed.
Well, Ms. Semino, thank you for being here today, and always, as always, there's a lot of good information in there, and obviously I get to hear a lot about this every month, and so I appreciate you coming and sharing with all of us and all of those in the audience and those who are going to watch this on TV. I started on the CVB board back in the 90s, and so I've seen a lot of iterations of marketing plans and what have you. But I think what strikes me with the creation of Visit Williamsburg, with the additional dollars, but I think with you and the organization, the approach to using data and technology to really make those informed decisions. Just talking about cell phone data.
Right.
All those things. I mean, it changes all the time. And you mentioned the fact that we won't be able to track cookies anymore. Mm-hmm. What do you see how are we going to track customers next?
So we'll be able to, we'll still have cell phone data, we'll still have credit card data, but what a number of our vendors are creating are called clean rooms. And so this assigns customer numbers to individuals who are using their product. So it's kind of creating an extra step for vendors because there's sort of this lack of cookie now. It's not automatically going to happen. They'll have to, in a more manual way, track consumers and along their path. So that's sort of the topic of conversation right now is a number of our vendors are working to create this first-party data system that will help them communicate why their product is working and why it works best. Yeah.
You talk about cell phone data, and this may be getting too much in the weeds, but when you have a cell phone, is it the area code that tells you where they come from?
Yeah.
And how is that affected by folks who may have moved from Tennessee to here and have kept that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Short answer is it's based on what home is for that particular user. So you can even tell by cell phone data if somebody commutes every day. So if you've got a 757 number, but you commute up to Northern Virginia 3 times a week, they still know, that you're not vacationing up there, that there's a behavior, and that on a consistent basis, you're traveling to that area. So yeah, and even with your zip code, they track where you're based the majority of the time. I still have a Boston phone number.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I didn't think you were going to admit that.
Well, too many people have it. And,
and we talk about Big Brother, but in that, we don't know who that individual is. We only know the number.
Right.
It's not, we don't know their social security number and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
It's completely safe for the consumers that visit our website, and so there really isn't any threat to data being lost in all that.
Correct. Yes, we follow all of the rules. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned influencers. 4 years ago, I would have, who are these people? But you look at how people consume information,
right?
Via the apps and Instagram and TikToks and
right.
what the influencers do in terms of selling products. I mean, it's pretty rampant, and so, of course, we would be.
Yeah, and you know what's, it's, as part of our work, we're always trying to shift consumer perception. And we want to promote the fact that this is a fun, exciting, sophisticated travel destination, but it can't always be Vicky from the tourism board, right? They want to hear from a trusted source, and it's amazing how much trust people put into social media influencers. And we also get some great pickup too. Shawn Johnson, the former Olympian who I mentioned, her trip here was featured in People magazine because they saw that she had posted in her Instagram feed that she was here. So, yeah.
Lots of good stuff. So thank you for that, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Semino, for the work that you do, and most of all for the detailed presentation today. I did have a couple well, first of all, it's great to see that the RevPAR is up for 42%, and that we are seeing a significant return on investment. A couple questions. When you talk about you entered new markets such as Atlanta, how long is an evaluation period before you determine that that's worth the investment in Atlanta?
Roughly 3 years. You kind of have to allow for some wear-in in that market. The year you launch, you're not going to see the kinds of jumps that, ironically, we're seeing in New York after just, being in that market. To see that pop up in our top 10 list so soon is very gratifying. But yeah, you have to give a new market at least 3 years to fully mature before you kind of make a call. Are we going to stay here, or are we going to put those dollars somewhere else?
Okay, and then the other question, during the presentation, you mentioned targeting Gen X and millennials. Can you talk a little bit more in detail what the basis for the targetings?
Well, sure. Basically, we target everyone from birth to death, and and we know that this is a great family destination. We also know that that active matures play a strong role in our visitor base once the summer comes to a close. And so by tracking consumer data through our website and gauging what age range people fall into, we know that we have to talk to active matures as much as we have to talk to millennials because they're an important part of our business.
And thank you. That I just think it was, when you mentioned it, it seemed like this is a primary focus, but as you said, from birth to death.
Right. I'm not proud. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, thank you. I was very pleased to hear you say Gen X, because we're usually just shot right over
I
and straight to the
know.
millennials. So thank
We're
you.
not gonna let that
and
happen.
that makes a lot of sense. Thinking as those with kids who are probably the perfect age to come visit and a lot of the historic sites in Busch Gardens. So yeah, that's really fantastic. And so thank you so much. A very detailed presentation. Every time I thought of a question, you basically answered it with the next slide. But speaking of the influencers, I think I saw like Nancy and Duke corgis. Are those actual dogs?
Yeah.
Influencers?
Yes, we do pet-friendly travel.
Okay, that's amazing.
Itineraries as well, yeah.
I love that,
Yeah.
I follow a couple dogs on Instagram, so I get it.
So yeah, follow the Navy corgis. They're very cute.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
But I did have a question about, speaking of the RevPAR, and I'm learning a lot of this, for the first time, because certainly I'm no expert in any of the marketing piece, but that is a very huge number, as far as I can tell, in terms of the increase. Like, what contributes to that, and how can we make sure we're doing more of whatever that is that helps, like, something increase that much? Because I imagine, as with many things, what you're doing has, good synergy with what other things might be happening, in our area. So what do you see as almost the complementary activities that help raise those numbers in a way that we really like to see?
The short answer is drive demand. And so the nation as a whole saw increased rates throughout the pandemic. And there's a couple of reasons, but the primary reason is workforce. And people weren't traveling, but then when they started to travel, hotels all throughout the nation were not able to fully open because the workforce just wasn't there to do that. And so with that, you had compressed inventory, which drove rate. And that happened throughout the country. I think here, where we're above average in that is, we've been able to get what we're putting out there from a rate structure point of view. And with hotels, there's a much stronger sense of what's called rate integrity. So people are pricing in line with each other. The industry, the hoteliers in particular, report to what's called STAR. It used to be Smith Travel Research, and that's where we get those occupancy numbers. And so they're constantly tracking each other's movement too. And hotels differ in that department a little bit, where if you look at timeshares, there's really no rate integrity. If you're looking to rent out a space, you could put $25 if you want. You're not necessarily going to look at all of your neighbors and say, well, John Smith is charging $250. And so it really is a balance of what are your competitors in the market charging and then increasing that. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
it's not an easy explanation.
I'm sure, yeah. I'm sure we could talk for a really long time about the intricacies of all this. Thank you so much for your time and everything.
And I'll just add, there's kind of been an evolution in terms of hotel operators. It used to be that we almost raced to the bottom. What's our neighbor charging? We're going $5 less.
Right.
And so we would essentially erode our own rate integrity trying to compete for competition. And I think today's, with, the internet and yield management systems,
Yeah.
hoteliers understand that that's a lose-lose scenario, so they compete at the higher rates. And I think it's important, we're still not as high as, the state of Virginia, or we're not as high as state of
No, we're not, but we're not far off, yeah.
So we're not gouging.
Yeah. We're doing well in the rate department, so.
That's okay. It sort of plays into a question that I had as well, and that's the factor of the timeshares that we have in this area, because
Yeah.
I think we have a huge number compared to other localities and how they factor into hotel occupancy and the RevPAR.
So there is a platform in place that measures occupancy for timeshares, but it's, like everything else that we do, a little complicated. So we know that we have more than 7,000 timeshare units, which is about the same amount of hotel rooms that we have in the destination. Now, that being said, we can only count what is posted to a third-party booking engine like an AirDNA. So we never have a full picture of, we've got X number of timeshares available but sold X. It's what's been posted that we're able to kind of glean what that inventory looks like. And so what the number that we kind of arrived at was, we looked at the month that had the most timeshare bookings, and that's the number we use for inventory. Yeah.
So that sort of got me off my saying thank you for coming for and giving us such an in-depth presentation. I think all of us who walk downtown and have noticed an increase over the past year, 2 years, with the number of people here, and particularly I think the number of families. So I think that's great, and I really appreciate your approach with data and incremental expansion, both into the market and to the product and content. So, and New York is a true example of that. So my question is, what concerns do people have in regards to getting here, and how do they get here from those expansion markets?
Everyone's driving here still for the
Still.
most part. Yeah, I think we need another year in Boston to see how many are flying versus driving. But my hunch is that Boston is still a drivable market for us, or people will split it up. Our challenge as just an overall destination is we have 3 airports, and it's really hard to get here.
Right.
So we want to certainly increase lift and focus on those markets with direct lift, like what Boston has. But at some point here, I'd like to focus on maybe an airline cooperative marketing partnership with either JetBlue or Delta to promote Williamsburg as a destination. But, and just sort of opening it up, we haven't gotten there quite yet.
And I think we all recognize that Colonial Williamsburg and Busch Gardens are still probably the big drivers, not, you know what I mean,
Yep,
economic
yep.
drivers here. But I really appreciate the effort to expand the brand. I think that's one thing that the city council has always been very interested in. And so, two questions. One, do you have an idea of the percentage of travelers that come for Colonial Williamsburg and Busch Gardens? And can you tell us a little bit more about the recent golf event in New York? Because
Sure,
from what
yeah.
I heard, that was pretty cool. I saw Ruth Larson the other day, and she was
Oh, yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, it was a great event. So, kind of talking a little bit about the golf event, it was my hope 4 years ago to do an annual event in New York City that targets travel writers and to invite them to some sort of event that they would learn something new about the destination. And so for our inaugural event, we chose golf and kind of, again, leaning into the sheer number of golf product that we have here and who designed those courses and how you can truly make it a week-long stay to hit them all. And so we literally brought Williamsburg to New York City. We worked with a production company and we created build-outs of an 8-foot governor, or just an 8-foot, sorry, I'm losing my words today. I think it's all of the allergy medication that I'm on. The Susan Constant, the Governor's Palace, thank you, and Mob Jack Bay. And so people were encouraged to take selfies of themselves in front of this set that we brought. So we magically brought the destination to New York City. And where we held the event, it's at Chelsea Piers Golf Club, and so they have a dozen plus golf bays, and so we rented 6 of those bays. There was a golf pro from Colonial Williamsburg helping journalists with their swing, and we got a lot of great feedback about how it was nice to have an interactive kind of component to the event, and that people learned a lot more about the things to see and do in the area outside of that history component. And to answer your first question, we can tell who's going where based on certainly where they're from, but then also that cell phone data. So we're able to track what your cross visitation is throughout the region and create heat maps so that, for example, if we know that the bulk of visitors from the New York market aren't going to the outlets, then we obviously need to increase shopping in our digital advertising in that market. So it helps us, it informs our marketing decisions to a certain degree. We also know that visitors to Busch Gardens tend to be from a closer proximity than visitors to our historic attractions, which primarily are visited by further away. Yeah.
Lots of good information. Thanks
Yeah,
again.
thank you.
And I echo all the notes of appreciation, Ms. Simoneau. This is always, for me, a fascinating presentation every single year. So thank you again for coming. And really this year, I feel like presenting numbers which, while they have been exciting in years past about the data you're able to pull from, are, I think, especially poignant to see both RevPAR increasing, but also general occupancy, right? So it's not so much that just rates are going up, it's the actual rate of people staying in those hotels.
Right.
And then compounded by the rate of the hotel itself. So that was one piece that was exciting to me. A second was, I found it interesting that for those unaware of our marketing, Williamsburg was not thought of as a diverse area to visit, but we had just talked right before this about visit Williamsburg in our marketing, particularly and purposefully making strides towards addressing that. And I think there was going to be some effort to promote Juneteenth celebration. I was curious if you could speak towards that for a moment.
Sure. We are partnering with Colonial Williamsburg and the Juneteenth Committee, and we're creating a landing page that will house events and activities taking place throughout that holiday weekend and putting some dollars behind search engine marketing. And so for us, this is just a very easy thing to do, but for the group, I think they're very excited about it because no one's done it. You know, we started last year and we're expanding on the commitment to be sure that we are focused on supporting the Black traveler in the area. And so, in fact, our ad agency is subcontracting a group called Fluent 360 out of Chicago to help us further refine our strategy as it relates to multicultural marketing.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
this past weekend with the rest of council, I was at an event with many members of our descendant community at Cedar Grove Cemetery, and I was just hearing from people who are organizing Juneteenth that they were so exciting for the Visit Williamsburg promotion.
Yeah.
That's still where I go with friends in town or family in town every single time to see what the events are in the area. And you all are probably already finding a way to address it, but it just hit me on the airline piece that, if you fly into major cities, you're not going to hit the downtown core of that city within a 30-minute drive, probably. If you're going to Heathrow or Dulles, it takes a long time to get from where those airports are purposely, not closer to the city center. So I've always tried to tell people that the Richmond Airport, you could probably get to 40 minutes from here.
Right.
There isn't as much additional distance as you think, even though it is two different cities. So
Right.
that kind of helps me describe it as a place that's great for travel from a flying standpoint as well.
Right. And that's kind of how we promote it in our efforts and on our website, that we are serviced by 3 airports. And early on in my role 4 years ago, we were working quite closely with Newport News International Airport and really trying to work through route development efforts, and attended a trade show with them, offered up cooperative marketing dollars so that we would be able to promote the route in tandem with the airline. And then the pandemic happened, and a lot has changed over the years, but certainly something that I would like to start looking at again as we kind of further refine some of these new markets that we're in.
And you see their airport too still expanding. It was a couple months back that the lower cost flight direct to Miami was launched into Newport News International. One of the questions I had though was around additional markets and how we put capital into other places. You mentioned the group advising Visit Williamsburg out of Chicago, and it didn't look like we have right now much in the ways of marketing to Chicago. It's probably a hard place to drive from. But one of the things that I can see on a small website that I have talking about things that council is up to is exactly where visitation comes from down to the city of a state. And it's broader than just the Richmond, DC community. So how do you all think about expanding into additional markets in the future?
We look at just organically how those markets are performing for us. We look at airlift into the area. We look at household income levels, education levels, those who would have the propensity to visit a destination like Williamsburg and the region. And so those are all factors. If we already see them kind of on the list, and each year we see those numbers increasing and we're doing nothing to talk to them directly, we know that there's opportunities there. And so through a tiered approach, through launching digital media first and then moving into television and kind of that broader upper funnel awareness level, if you will, we are very thoughtful about how we approach new markets, and when it's time to say we got that one right, and when it's time to say we didn't get that one right at all, and we're going to move on with our lives. So.
Well, that's good. I have to think there is some of that natural growth where you can see, it'd be hard to drive from a Chicago or Denver or San Francisco,
Right.
but that's not to say that for larger trips, like you said, when you fly, you end up staying more. And if the core of
Yeah.
someone on the West Coast's region is coming to DC, that's not to say Williamsburg can't see some of those dollars by coming a little more south.
And through our sales effort is how we navigate some of that too. So we'll work with a tour operator who has a program into DC but is looking to do what's called a hub and spoke, and do other destinations around that urban metropolitan area, so we can get some of that business through those means too.
My last question was, as a non-marketing person, you mentioned some of the archetypes that we are pointedly putting our dollars towards, right? What are some of the age ranges or the demographics that we aren't able to, with as much success, target and bring to Williamsburg?
I would answer this question in a way as we haven't started talking to Gen Z yet. And so we're really looking at that because like the millennials, even like Gen Xers to a certain degree, those children have some decision-making abilities in the family as to where they want to go on vacation this year. And so we're looking at everything from, do we go into the metaverse and start, looking at sort of that virtual reality or gaming or, how just different tactics that as a Gen Xer wouldn't speak to me. I mean, I'm barely on TikTok, I'm a Facebook kind of person. So, but really trying to reach people where they're at. And so Gen Z's next on the list, but pretty much everyone else, we're talking to them.
All right,
Yeah.
that was all. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Semino, thank you very much. I think
Yeah.
we all enjoyed it and hope you all enjoyed the presentation and the conversation. So thank you. We look forward to seeing you soon again, maybe in another 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I'm always happy to come back. Thank you for having me. I appreciate
Thank
the
you. We
time.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, takes us to item B, presentation and discussion of VDOT's HR 05 project pipeline, Route 199, Hummelstein Parkway. We have, I guess, Ms. Chad, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, members of the council. I'll be brief in my opening remarks. Let's see here. My name is Chad Tucker. I work for the Office of the Secretary of Transportation and oversee the project pipeline program. The Route 199 corridor was one of the studies that was selected in the first round of that program. And the last time we came to the council, I believe it was last spring, we had just finished up public engagement and had received quite a bit of feedback from the public through the MetroQuest survey. I think it was the largest number in that round, around 3,000 individuals taking that survey. And what was decided at that point was rather than progress to phase 3, which would be getting into a detailed cost estimate and all, we decided to do an extended public engagement period. Where last fall we came out here to the Stryker Center for 2 public meetings. We also did some community engagement to just get feedback from the people that use the corridor, that live along the corridor, of what they liked and what they didn't like, so that we could start to make concept refinements to address those concerns and those issues. And so where we're at now is essentially we're at the end of phase 2 extended, and I'm going to turn things over to Danielle here in a second to kind of walk y'all through the refined concepts. And really at a decision point between the county and the city as to whether or not there's support to move forward into phase 3, which would be getting into the more detailed traffic analysis to understand how the concepts work together, but also to develop more detailed engineering and cost estimations so we have an understanding of any right-of-way impacts and community impacts for the recommended improvements. So that's where we're at, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle, and she's going to walk y'all through the refined concepts, and so thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Danielle McCrae with Kimley Horn, and I'm the task lead for this effort. We're supporting the VDOT and OIP team on this effort. And so I had the privilege of being here with you all last fall, briefing you all on the concepts and walking through the details that we were taking to the public. We doubled down and we had some in-person engagement last fall. We had a total of 4 different public meetings, and we as a project team were present to answer questions, to walk through the concepts, to clarify any misunderstanding or confusion that may have been interpreted from the online survey. And we also presented a 10-minute narrated video presentation to illustrate and walk through what a potential change to the 199 corridor would look like. As a result of that, we had about 55 people here at the Stryker Center doing those community meetings, and over 100 people attended our official public meetings. We received feedback from the public in person that most people who attended seemed to have a better understanding of what we were trying to accomplish. And that was because we had our project team there presenting the concepts. Not everyone walked away agreeing with the concepts. There was still some opposition to the concepts and what we were presenting. but as a whole, we feel as if we were able to better communicate what we were trying to address. And that was ultimately the safety and the congestion along 199. Based on that feedback from the public, what I'm going to do is walk through the 3 different study areas and show you the same graphics that we showed in the fall with a few highlights of what we would change in the concepts if we were to move forward. And so these are the refinements based off the public feedback from last fall. And if we were to engage in a more comprehensive model and analysis, as Chad mentioned. I'll also mention that the final report from phase 1 and 2 are available on the project website. They were published, the project report and the appendices are available earlier this year on the website. So if you recall at Brookwood Drive, we introduced or recommended a through-cut concept. And this graphic that's on the screen shows 199 from left to right of the screen. And the numbers that are shown here call out the things that would change or we are considering based on feedback from the public. I will walk through a few of them, and the first being advanced warning signs, flashing warning signs in the westbound direction on 199 before motorists hit that congestion at Brookwood Drive. Based on public feedback, we would review or consider removing the U-turn locations proposed here on 199, and motorists would have to execute that movement at an adjacent intersection. Left turns are not prohibited. Only the through movements on Brook Road Drive the left turn movements are permitted as they were previously from Brookwood Drive and from and to Brookwood Drive. So left turn movements from Brookwood or left turn movements from 199 will be permitted or allowed under this concept. That is not changing at all. I wanted to call that out because I see that in the green box there. A couple things we heard from the public: explore bicycle connectivity from Holly Hills Carriage Homes to Jamestown Road. That's something that we could explore in a future phase. Something that is a quick win from VDOT. Vegetation has already been cleared in the westbound direction along 199 since our meetings in person last fall. And we would maintain the existing multimodal connections along Lake Powell Road, that number 5 there. So that will be maintained. That was some concerns from the public about any restrictions to cyclists or pedestrians. That access will maintain. I'll move on to Jamestown Road. And at this location, 199 goes from top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. This again is the same graphic that was shared at the public meetings in fall of 2022. As a reminder, the concept here is considered a bow tie. So left turns are eliminated from Jamestown Road to 199. And they are rerouted through the 2 roundabouts that were proposed. This is the preferred alternative that we recommended before, and now I'll walk through a few things that we would change based on feedback we heard from the public. We would certainly consider shifting the location of the northern roundabout near Woodmere Drive. That was resounding feedback from the public. So as we get closer to preliminary engineering, we'll be able to better understand the exact placement of that roundabout. But we would look to minimize impacts to residential properties and shift that roundabout to really minimize any impacts there. Short-term improvements to explore access management along Jamestown Road. In advance of completing this full comprehensive concept, we would continue to explore that with VDOT. There are currently some left turn restriction signs to the 7-Eleven there. Exploring some other measures along the road there. Physical barriers is something that we've discussed with VDOT, and so we'll continue to explore that. We would look to provide a transit shelter on the west side of Jamestown Road. There's currently a transit shelter near the CVS on the east side of the road, but to better accommodate transit service, we would incorporate a transit shelter on the west side of the road, and continue to be committed to the multimodal experience along Jamestown Road for cyclists, connectivity for pedestrians along sidewalks. That would be incorporated into this full concept on Jamestown Road. Moving on to John Tyler Highway. The proposed concept, again, this graphic that was shown at the public meeting is a displaced left concept, where your left turn movements in advance of the signal cross over the opposing traffic with a signalized intersection. And based on feedback from the public, our team had suggested a signal at the Strawberry Plains Road intersection, but there was more desire for a roundabout. So we would explore a roundabout with this concept, shown at the top of the screen there. We would explore the geometric shape of that roundabout to minimize impacts to College Woods, which would be at the very top of the screen here. So that's something that we would have to take into consideration as we get closer into design. Also exploring flashing signs west of John Tyler Highway. As you come from Monticello, as you approach the study area, some flashing signs to alert motorists of the change in speeds, and the reduced speed zone is something that we will explore. And the last slide here that I have about changes that we would consider if we were to advance forward would be consolidated signage for the entire study area, not just at John Tyler Highway, because that came up quite a bit. Improving access management from Williamsburg Crossing Shopping Center, and eliminating the weave that occurs when people leave that shopping center to make a left onto Route 199. We would look to address that safety concern that came up from the public. That's number 6, shown on the graphic. And of course, when we advance forward and if we were to do a comprehensive model of this entire network, we would make sure that our left turn, all of our turn storage bays are designed to a length that is effective and appropriate for the forecasted volume. So those are a few highlights of what we would consider if we were to move forward with the proposed concepts based on feedback from the public. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chad for the next steps.
All right. So we're really at a decision point of whether or not to proceed, if there's support from the city and from the county for the concepts to be able to move forward and do some of the preliminary engineering to understand the cost and the impacts, and also do the additional traffic analysis for these. So there's really 2 options here, and either one of them is good. You know, one would be not to advance forward with the refined concepts. The second would be, if this council is willing, would be to do that phase 3, get a better understanding, and present a investment strategy that the city council can consider moving forward for potential avenues to get the improvements funded. One of the things we did want to mention, and this became clear when we had the public meetings, I think a lot of folks thought like we were getting ready to go out and start moving dirt. But the reality is, if this were to move forward for round 6 of Smart Scale, it would get put in the 5th year of the 6-year improvement program, which means PE wouldn't start for another 6 or 7 years. So you're really looking at the earliest that we would be looking at construction if everything were to work, if everything were to fall in line, would be in the year 2033. So we're looking at least 10 years in the future before there would be any dirt being moved and any improvements being made. And one of the concerns is this trend that we're seeing along the corridor is increased congestion. I think the previous presentation is very timely to this one. The increase in tourism that you all are seeing, you know, we believe that the corridor will continue to deteriorate from a congestion standpoint and also from a safety standpoint over the next 5 to 10 years. So really it's, you know, it's for this council to decide whether or not you feel like we've got some good workable concepts that we can move forward with or not. And one of the big changes in Smart Scale is the state doesn't select the projects that move forward. We have to have willing partners at the city, at the local and regional level to put those applications in. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions that you have for the study team.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. So in terms of process, and I think you just mentioned it, well, let me back up. So what you're looking for is some guidance as to whether we wish to proceed to a phase 3, which is only to validate kind of these plans and do some more engineering on there to see if they actually work?
Yeah, it would be a more detailed traffic analysis and safety analysis to where we would be able to better quantify to the city council and the county board the anticipated benefits of the improvements as a system, both from a congestion standpoint as well as from a safety standpoint. And it would give you more information to then base a final decision on, how to proceed along the corridor.
So, assuming that James City County and the city say, okay, move to phase 3, what work would be done to invalidate some of what we see here in terms of whether or not there is a better design that could take place, whether a bridge ultimately is, over 199 is a better solution, or to say, well, maybe we don't need to do anything with 199, let's focus on John Tyler and Brookwood. Is that plausible?
I think these concepts, we were specifically going into the study trying to avoid, one, a very costly improvement, but also an improvement that was going to be detrimental to the surrounding community. And I think the strategies that we focused on were what can we do to the existing intersections at grade to reduce signal phases and move the needle both from a congestion and delay standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint. I believe our preliminary estimate for these improvements here was somewhere in the order of 30 to 40 for all three intersections, compared to a grade separation just at the Route 5 intersection. You're looking at upwards of 80 to 90 million for one improvement, and not to mention the impacts to the surrounding businesses and community, that are around that intersection. So I think
just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that I support a bridge. I think what I was getting at is, if you move to phase 3, will additional studies be done to invalidate some of this, and maybe you'll find a better solution? Because maybe the bow tie isn't the right solution.
Well, I think we'll be able to better quantify it in a way for the city council and the county. These are the anticipated benefits that we see from doing these 3 improvements together. Because one of the questions we got at the public meeting was, well, Brookwood's not that bad. Why don't we just focus on the other intersections? And the issue is if you address the other intersections, then Brookwood will become an issue. So they really do fit hand in hand, the improvements at all 3 intersections. But it is an acceptable outcome of the additional analysis would be to say, all right, this is how much we're going to affect congestion and delay, both for 199, but also for the side streets. Because I believe there was some concern that we were prioritizing 199 over Brookwood and John Tyler and some of the other. So what are the benefits to all the users, both the side street and the main line? And, really it would be this city council and James City County Board of Supervisors to decide, is it worth it? Is the cost of the improvement worth the anticipated benefits that we're seeing 10, 20 years down the road versus a no-build option?
So agreeing to go, council said, okay, let's move to phase 3. That is not an agreement to building the roads, because that decision would have to come back after
you're not committing that to build the improvements by agreeing to move forward into phase 3. I mean, certainly it is the state's desire that we're not, going to do a lot of additional analysis and cost estimation, and hopefully it's going to go somewhere, and we're going to be able to improve the corridor for the public. But agreeing to move forward with phase 3 is not a commitment from either the city or the county that you're going to approve what comes out the other end.
So you talk about smart scale, and so that's a process in which funds are allocated from VDOT to certain projects.
Yes.
And that's a nuance that's relatively new, I think. Whereas before, VDOT would come in and say, we recognize that these improvements need to be made, and essentially they would do it on their own. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's a big paradigm shift, I think, for the state, in that we have to do our job to get support of the localities and the regions that ultimately are going to be impacted by these projects before we move forward. And that was a critical policy decision that was made as we were creating Smart Scale 7 or 8 years ago.
And, obviously, the city has taken advantage of smart scale applications with VDOT, and so we appreciate, the efforts that you've made in other parts of the city. And certainly, I think all of us appreciate the value of looking at what this intersection to improve safety. I think there's some concern, somebody said recently, one accident is too much, and anything we can do to help protect lives is important. But, is there a scale, how much benefit are we going to get versus the additional congestion or, the collateral damage that will come if we make some of these changes? So, thank you for that. I may come back with some more questions, but Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the update and identifying the refinements from the meetings that were held with the community. But I want to be sure that I understand and those watching understand. So in order for this to move forward, you would need support from James City County and from the city. There's not an opportunity where we're not going to say we did not approve to move forward, that they would move forward with some.
No, we
project in James City.
really need both jurisdictions to be on board, given the location and the fact that part of the project is in both jurisdictions. So we did meet with the county, was that 2-3 weeks ago? And James City County indicated that they were supportive of us moving forward to phase 3. And so really, the decision here today from the city council as to whether or not y'all are supportive moving forward will determine, do we wrap up the extended phase 2 and just say these are the alternatives to consider here in the future, or do we do some additional work to better quantify the benefits and understand the cost and impacts?
And so you touched on this earlier, but again, I just want to clarify. So there's also not an opportunity for the city to say we agree with a portion of these concepts, but we don't support the other concepts because everything's so interconnected.
This question came up when we met with James City County 2 weeks ago. There's certainly the opportunity to make tweaks to the concepts that are here. But I will say, I believe the improvements that we've come up with do work hand in hand as far as the bow tie, the through cut, and the displaced lefts at John Tyler. That if you were to not do one of them, then you would essentially, that intersection would become the problem in the future. But there is opportunity. I know, bike crossings was something that came up with James City Council, James City County. Looking at improvements to transit connectivity along the corridor and along the side streets. So those would be things that we would be able to further refine and tease out in the studies. But for example, at Route 5, there's already been an extension of turn lanes, and we've sort of maxed that option out. So there are some options that I think really aren't going to be able to move the needle moving forward. It would really be looking at something more like a grade separation, which I believe the impacts to the surrounding community and the cost of that would make it an infeasible option. So I think there is an opportunity to make tweaks to the concepts and refinements.
So that's one of the things that, I'll just be quite honest, that causes me some concern is that we're just talking about tweaks and refinement, but basically these are the concepts. And, having attended those community engagement sessions and speaking with many members of the community, especially for our side of Jamestown Road at Woodmere, tweaking that roundabout one place or another was not what the citizens were looking for. They were looking for no roundabout at all. So yeah. I don't think that tweaking it, moving it a little bit to protect, someone's property is going to be the outcome that those citizens were looking for. And then I just want to I didn't catch this when I was reviewing the presentation, but the unsignalized U-turns would be removed. So basically, if somebody wanted to go straight across coming from Williamsburg Landing wanted to go straight across Brookwood, they're gonna make a right on 199 East and have to go to Henry Street
Yes.
and turn around and come back.
And that's something we'll be able to analyze, what would be the travel time distance? If you didn't have those median U-turn locations, how much additional travel would having to go down to Henry Street and come back? And then in the other direction, going down to Route 5.
Yeah, because then you have to go, you make a right turn, you go down Jamestown Road through a roundabout, across 199 to another roundabout,
Yes.
back around to get straight across on Brookwood. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, and the mayor touched on it, was having a public safety background. I agree that one accident is too many, but if I recall from the initial presentation, it was an anticipated reduction of five or six accidents.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm not sure at the exact location. At Brookwood only, that was the number.
Yeah.
It was greater at Jamestown Road.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your presentation and for obviously all the work that has gone into this already. And I guess I just want to kind of just look at, since there's a good timeline, everybody loves a timeline. So if I'm understanding correctly, then the idea here is that if Phase 3 is given the green light by both jurisdictions, then you go and you do, kind of the work that you're saying about coming back with more refined, here are the anticipated benefits. And would that also include, from what I could tell, is some of these things are well, we would consider shifting the roundabout, we would consider, is this the time where those would move to be no, we're not considering anymore, we've had to fish or cut bait on what this design would actually be, or instead of it being a little more fluid, which is what it kind of sounds like right now?
No, I think if we move forward with Phase 3, the idea would be when you get to the end of Phase 3, these are the concepts that we think make the most sense. Because as part of Smart Scale, we have to know what the project, specifically what the project's doing.
Right, so where I was going with this then, is that means that the August 1st, 2024 date when the Smart Scale applications are due, that is the point where that decision would need to be made. Okay, so if we're looking at what's after Phase 3 is by August 1st, 2024, it has to be decided whether or not this would be applied for.
Whether to hit submit on the final application.
But until that point, it could still be well, we've looked at the anticipated benefits, we've seen now this is it. We back up, we say no. Okay, and then the other thing, okay, so 2023, that seems far, away, 10 years. So when you're doing projections about potential benefits and what will happen, what kind of data are you using in terms of how to make decisions? Because what things look like right now, you have to, I imagine in 10 years, things could be different. So how is that taken into account that really we're making decisions now about a road and about a kind of a community that may, have different needs or look a little different in 10 years? How is that factored into the thinking?
So when we look at traffic projections or the growth that's anticipated in the area, we use a few data points. We look at historic trends, like what's happened over the past 5 to 10 years. We do recognize that during the most recent few years with COVID, travel patterns were different, and so we completed a sensitivity analysis as part of this study to understand how travel patterns differed. So historic data points to understand growth, and also the regional travel demand model to understand what is forecasted in the future years from your body, your governing body, what you have identified for future development in your traffic analysis zones, where development will be, where residential homes will be. That helps us understand where people will be traveling from and to. So that's another data point. And then we use some of the streetlight data, some of the existing data to understand, similar to what the presenter before mentioned, to understand travel patterns. Where do we see travel patterns and how that may or may not shift in the future. So those are a couple data points we use to help us inform what our forecasted horizon year will look like. And then collectively with staff from both the City of Williamsburg and James City County and VDOT, we talk about what our agreed forecasted rate would be. And as a group, we agree on what that growth would be. So it's not a black box. We actually look at a lot of data points to understand what trajectory may continue to occur or where there may be shifts in traffic patterns.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's, a lot of process questions, but then there's also like proposal questions I have, but the one that I'm just curious about, I guess, right now, as an example of something that, like, a sort of consider doing something, there was something in there about considering doing like lighting at the roundabout at John Tyler. So what does that mean, lighting at a roundabout? Because I've been at roundabouts where there's also stop signals, and I'm like, am I supposed to follow the light? Am I supposed to go around the circle? Like, it's almost like there's too much going on. So what does it mean when you say lighting at a roundabout?
So in that case, when we refer to lighting, we're not talking about a signalized signal or like an indicator for motorists. We're actually talking about lighting for safety purposes.
Just street lighting?
Just street lighting,
Okay.
so that as you approach the roundabout, you may see it, you may be more aware that it exists, and it's really just street lighting.
Okay.
It's not like a signalized
Okay.
intersection.
Okay, I'm sure there'll be many more little detailed questions about that, but I'll stop right there. Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation, and specifically want to thank you for the additional community engagement you did last fall. I think that was very helpful for all of us and for the community. I don't have too many other questions than what have already been brought up, but when you say, I just want to clarify, for option one, if we do not advance forward as far as getting in the queue for funding, then this potential money would go elsewhere, and our opportunity to sort of get back in the queue could be 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah, so Smart Scale is every 2 years, so it would be August of 2026 would be the round 7. And that would be the next opportunity to at least go after Smart Scale money. Now, one of the important things to mention with the Phase 3, we will develop an investment strategy of what are all the different funding sources that the city and county can go after, whether it's federal money, it could be Highway Safety Improvement Program, the TAP program. Smart Scale is one funding bucket out of many, and one of the things that you'll have is sort of, these are the different elements that are recommended, and here's what each element is eligible for from a funding standpoint to maximize the city and county's opportunities to be able to go after and pull together a funding strategy for any improvements that you do agree with.
And having watched the county's presentation and question and answer period, I think one of the things that came out was that the cost of this is not going to be less in 2 years, and eventually, something's going to have to be done with 199 because it's only going to get busier. One of the things you didn't specifically mention, but I would think would factor in, is the expansion of I-64 is bringing more growth to this area, and we'll just have more people feeding onto 64 from here. And so I just want to be sure that if we go forward now and with the Phase 3 to get in line for the funding, there is still opportunity to sort of step back, I guess, after the design changes, tweaks are made. Okay, thank you.
I listened to that as well. I think the figure used was kind of pulled out of the air, but 110 to 133 million. Yeah,
Right.
It's a significant increase, and as costs are always increasing, so I'm cognizant of that as well. I won't heap on with a number of extra questions since a lot has already been addressed. But one of the things I wanted to ask, though, is I'm kind of conflating this project, even though it's totally different, with another roundabout consideration we've discussed along Richmond Road and Lafayette Street. And the reason I bring it up is because years ago, the planning department got essentially in the queue for funding, and now we are not at a place of having seen final designs, but at least willing to consider those before saying yes or no, this is something we'd like to consider. The reason I bring it up is that 6-year gap between summer of 2025 and 2031 it seems quite broad, and I recognize there would need to be a number of years to plan for that investment of, like you said, 30 to 40 million plus 90 million, dependent on, the bridge, which was brought up as just an idea. But can you tell us, once we reach if we decide to do it, 2023 or 2033 timeframe, are there other opportunities for council's approval or public comment closer to the funding actually being dispersed?
That's a good question. I mean, certainly, if it were to move forward in round 6, and it gets selected in the summer of 2025, you're probably looking somewhere around 2030 before we would start the preliminary engineering process. So whatever happens in those, those years, we don't know what could happen. But the county and the city would be able to make decisions, before the PE process starts, and really should be engaged as part of the preliminary engineering process moving forward, up to the construction process. So I think there'll be a couple of touch points along that way to be able for the city and the county to be able to weigh in on the design refinement and the final alternative. Because remember, we still do the design public hearings as part of the design process. And so there'll be those public touch points with the city and county as well as with the citizens if it were to move forward.
It's the last comment and question I sort of have is actually the vice mayor brought it up, and it was the conversation around a roundabout outside Woodmere and how it was shifted west. Would that waylay concerns? Maybe for some, but I remember that community was also well organized and not being interested in the roundabout. And it was mentioned for that piece and for Brookwood that while some people say, well, we don't have a huge problem at those intersections, we don't need to address them. Well, if you change the landscape at other major intersections like 199 in Jamestown, then naturally those will also shift. So my kind of concern is that from what I was hearing about the inability to do a U-turn after Brookwood, that would be a significant detour for someone who is trying to go in straight. But is there even an option to edit? Let's say we remove the Woodmere roundabout and the Brookwood design as is, would that scrap our ability to get past phase 3 funding, even with the review that you all do?
I mean, we certainly could look at what would be the option of eliminating that roundabout, but are there other options to relocating it, say, further to the north or to the west to try to avoid some of those impacts? You are definitely correct. That was one of the more outspoken communities during the extended public engagement was the concerns of that roundabout, the proximity to the entrance, the impacts, potential impacts to the surrounding properties. And so that would be something that we would need to look, deeper into in phase 3 to understand, is there the option? But I do think that roundabout is very pivotal in being able to restrict the lefts to 199 in both directions and provide a way for folks to quickly do a U-turn and then come down and make a right.
Yeah.
But it's certainly something that can be looked at in the third phase, should y'all decide to move forward.
Right, and that's kind of how I'll close, which is driving around these streets often, I recognize there can be problems with them as is. At certain rush hours, you get way backed up so that if you're trying to turn onto Jamestown, you're not able to, you're almost having to block the box outside of Brookwood, right? That's how far back it can go. So I don't want to be someone who kicks the can down the road, but it actually sounds like the review and the additional phase 3 research that you all would be able to gather would be helpful to us as we consider the human safety aspect of this, but the speed to destination aspect as well. So thank you for the presentation.
And I think the other thing that will come out of the analysis is 3D renderings and models that will show the public from the driver's perspective how these intersections will look. And we found those to be extremely powerful in helping the public understand, what the impacts to their community is going to be and also how they would navigate the intersection. So I think that would be a hopeful tool that would get developed in the third phase.
Thank you.
So, to follow up question, so I think the issue for me and a lot of people is the bow tie Jamestown Road 199. And I know that there were some suggestions made through all the public input scenarios, to understanding that the goal here is to minimize accidents, but to also increase throughput. And one of the suggestions that I think I heard in the other room was, reducing speed during peak traffic times with, so that with flash, signs that could be adjusted further out from the intersection. So, if it's 45 now, it drops to 35 during that period of time. Any consideration, any feedback or follow-up from your department?
Adjustable speed limit, I mean, that's certainly something that could be looked at. I know one concern we heard at the James City County meeting 2 weeks ago was the concerns that our objective or goal was to try to increase speeds through the corridor, and that did not fly in sort of in the face of safety. And, the way we responded was really it's not about increasing speeds as much as reducing the amount of time that you sit at the signals. Oftentimes folks are waiting through 2, 3, 4 cycles of the signal before they can get through. But I agree, particularly in the westbound direction at Brookwood, that was a problem. The residency was able to go out there and clear some of the vegetation that was obstructing the view of folks that were headed south, making the right onto 199. So some of those issues, but, people were coming at a pretty good clip into this area. And so certainly, reducing that speed would provide benefits.
Well, so I think part of the question then was, what steps can we do more immediately to start to satisfy mitigation of accidents and also then increased throughput? And I understand when we talk about speeds through, we're not talking about accelerated speeds, we're just talking about the time in which we sit. The other thing I think that came up, and you can drive that intersection anytime, was what measures can be implemented to reduce curb cuts, particularly on the 7-Eleven side of Jamestown Road. So many times, what you'll find is somebody trying to make a left turn into 7-Eleven, which just jams up the intersection. Yeah. And so, if you could alleviate that, I think a lot. As I sit here, I'm a little apprehensive because, it's that proverbial camel's nose. And so while I understand that going to phase 3 does not green light the project, I just hate to telegraph that, this is, full steam ahead. And so, so with that, I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision at this moment, but, this council has some wishes, but any further thoughts?
Yeah, I just had one additional question. When you talk, see, James City County and we as a city council decided to move forward to phase 3. The state's funding the work that takes place until the application is?
Yeah, so the project pipeline program is funded with dollars that can only be used for planning and preliminary engineering, advanced PE work. So there wouldn't be any cost to the city or the county in moving forward. It would be funded through the project pipeline program that I mentioned.
Well, and with that being said, as the mayor just stated, that's what raises some concern for me, is I think it would be irresponsible to say that I'm comfortable moving forward to phase 3 and expend all of those dollars. You come back with a design that looks very much similar to this, and then we say, no, this is not going to work for us. So that's something I need to give some thought before, for me to commit to move to phase 3.
Okay. So, and I know I have some speakers cards here that some folks would like to speak on this, so we're going to go ahead and take it at the right time. We'll have an open forum and listen to some speakers. But thank you very much for both coming up and helping us understand the process better.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, takes us next to presentation and discussions regarding the recent work of the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facilities Authority. I'd apologize, Jim, for making you sit through these meetings, but you sat through many of these in long
Lots of
career.
experience.
Welcome.
Thank you. I feel better now. It showed
There
up.
it is.
So, Mayor Pons, members of the council, thank you for having me this evening. I apologize for fighting a cold. My voice is not the best tonight. Before I begin the update on the RIFA, which make this meeting much shorter if we quit saying Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority, I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, Steve Harrison, who is the Chief Operating Officer with the Hampton Roads Alliance, is the organization that now gainfully employs me to help with this organization, and also is your regional economic development entity. And so appreciate Steve making the trek over tonight to be here. And if you did have any questions about the Hampton Roads Alliance, he'd be happy to address those at the conclusion of the presentation. So a little background, another code site, as Ms. Simoneau had one earlier. This organization was officially recognized by the state in 2018. And if there's one point that I make tonight that I want to leave you with that you remember, this is effectively creating a regional economic development authority. So all of us have economic development authorities that do wonderful things. This allows that same concept to be employed on a regional basis. And I think, as everyone is very much aware, localities in Virginia are kind of like individual fiefdoms. So you can only eat what you kill, so to speak, in terms of tax revenue and then providing services for your citizens. What this allows localities to do is work together on economic development to hopefully attract new investment, create tax revenue that then can be shared among localities, which there's really no other mechanism in Virginia to allow us to do that. And I think everyone would agree that from a land use planning standpoint, a lot of times it's much more effective for one community to host a project than it might be for another one, and also from a resource standpoint. So some communities may be rich in land, but not in financial resources. Others may have more financial resources. This allows us to pool those to work together to perhaps play on one's strengths to benefit all. So if there's nothing else you remember about the RIFA, it's a tremendous mechanism for regional economic development. And there are now 12 in the Commonwealth. We're the last one. All the others are in more the western part of the state. So this is the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority, and we named it that purposely to hopefully get more localities to join from the 10 that are now members. And to that point, the initial membership were the Peninsula communities effectively, and Gloucester. And then right after that, in 2020, we had 3 more localities come on board, all from the south side. And as I'll mention a little bit more later, we're trying to get all of the Alliance communities as to be members, and we could even extend that to the Eastern Shore and others. There's nothing that doesn't allow us to have more members. We have a board of directors like any other organization, and I'm happy to say that one of your EDA members, Harold Phillipson, is our treasurer. David Meeker from Gloucester, chair, so we've got good representation from both sides of the water with Richard Grice from Isle of Wight. So just a little bit of the management issue, and candidly, when we first formed this organization, that was something that we kind of left out. And so staff from some of the existing communities served in that capacity. But I was extremely excited when I was with York County that the Hampton Roads Alliance stepped up and said, this fits perfectly into our purview, what we're trying to do with regional economic development. It would make sense for us to service this organization to help manage it, and we're happy to do that at no additional cost to the member localities. Makes a lot of sense. As noted there, I'm working for them on a part-time basis to help with this. although they are in the throes of hiring a real estate director, and this will fall under that person's purview, and hopefully they'll move me out to real retirement at some point in the future here. From a cost standpoint, this is a much less expensive organization than some that were mentioned earlier. So just your general membership dues for the RIFA, if your population's over 50, is 4, less than 50, it's 2. But the idea is for the communities in the RIFA to then engage in actual projects that will hopefully then return revenue, and any of the localities can participate in any given project. It only takes 2 of the membership, and you don't have to play if you don't want to. If that project doesn't make sense for your community, you still retain your seat on the big RIFA board, but you're not part of that particular project. And I'll talk a little bit more about the one project that we're engaged in here a little bit later. When you do engage in a project, it is a group decision by those communities participating how we're going to invest and how we're going to share the revenue. And that has to be approved by each of the localities' respective elected bodies. Repeating myself here. So they may consider participation or not in any given project, but you only get pay if you play in a given project, and there's no requirement to actually get involved. We have one project, and that's the Kings Creek Commerce Center. That project, which I know you all are familiar with, but for others that may not be, was the acquisition of 432 acres of surplus state property. It is right off of 199/Penniman Road, and I have a graphic of the site here in a second. It's located effectively kind of between Cheatham Annex and Water Country, if you will, in terms of where it's located on the peninsula, and it's in York County. We did a really cool thing. We were able to take 250 acres of that property and lease it for a solar project, and that effectively paid for the project. So the communities that acquired this now are left with that remaining acreage, which has about 80 developable acres, and they got that for a total cost of about $70,000, which is, a great deal. Now, when you turn around and want to sell that property to businesses, you can be very aggressive if you want to or not, but you have a low basis in the property. Additionally, we got a Go Virginia grant to hopefully move this property higher up on the site preparedness continuum, and they're doing the work right now. It'll be done in June, and they're doing an ALTA survey for us, geotech work. They're going to lay out 3 different scenarios for a light industrial park on the property, analyze the utility capacities, how they would lay out, and it should move us up to a 3 or a 4 on the state scale. And here's a graphic of the actual property. Everything kind of to the right of that orange line is the solar project. To the left, you see the green areas are the developable acreage that we have available to market. And the property is very close to the interstate. We have all utilities to the property right now. The Jamestown Yorktown Foundation has a 60,000 square foot facility. The state took that property out of this and gave it to them, which was great. But to give you some scale, that's a 60,000 square foot building right there above the JYF. And they do a number of different things there. But that helped get utilities in a road. So these are the communities, and Williamsburg is one, and much appreciated, that are participating in this particular project. That's the annual contribution. We just passed a budget for the next fiscal year and mimic those same numbers. The revenue disbursement from anything that's sold on this property, anything that's generated there, 5% goes to York as the host, 5% goes to support the big RIFA. The remaining 90% comes back to the localities in the pro rata share of their contribution. We are marketing this property right now. The Alliance is actively working to push the property. We just submitted it as one of 3 or 4 sites in Hampton Roads for a European-based food processing facility. The odds are pretty long, but we're at least in the game. And I think this is an important point, this next bullet. This site is being included in an assessment and marketing effort by the Alliance as a potential for a data center, which can be very, very lucrative for communities. The CapEx in those is very strong, and the return is very, very good. for the participants. So Mike Grella, who was an Amazon executive, has a consulting company called Grella Partnership Strategies, and he's analyzing sites in Hampton Roads, their suitability for data centers, and then will help us market those. And KPMG has also been engaged by the Alliance for some other studies and assistance. I'll mention that in a minute, but they're also going to be assisting with this as well. Where are we going from here with the RIFA? We want to get everybody involved. We want all the Alliance members to be participants. The more members we have, the more opportunities we have to match up resources. Communities that, as I said, may have a large, could have a mega site, but not the money to extend the utilities. That could be an ideal type of project for the RIFA. We want to talk to each of the communities members about other projects, ideas they may have for future endeavors. And lastly, this area is being now included in a KPMG contract that the Alliance has to look at best practices for RIFAs and other regional organizations. So they're going to give us some ideas of how we can employ this tool even more effectively. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. Hopefully I maybe got you back on your timeline a little bit better. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Got us closer, thank you. So, a lot of good stuff. And Mr. Harrison, thank you for being here with the Alliance. And as you know, I do serve on the Alliance board and hear much about this. But, just having the RIFA available kind of gives us more opportunity. As you all know, City of Williamsburg is 9 square miles. So this gives us an opportunity to participate with our neighboring jurisdictions or any other member that's in the RIFA that may need some assistance, financial capital that we can help, but then we can get the benefit. And I think the example of the site off of over there by Kings Creek is a great one. I mean, just the market value of 80 acres there, if it's sold, we would more than get our money back, the $10,000 investment. Clearly what we're hoping is to be part of something that's bigger there where new industries can arrive, creates new jobs, supports our local economies. And I think that's kind of the direction that we go in. So I don't have any questions for you, but thank you for being there. I hope that one day you get to retire. I know Vicki would appreciate that. But thank you for all your efforts, and certainly thank you for all your years of service to York County. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Jim, for the update. And as the mayor stated, it's really excited to see what's going to happen with Kings Creek, the first project. And that took the ability to have the solar pay for the solar investment pay for the property. So really looking forward to that. I don't have any questions, and retirement's not all it's cracked up to be.
I'll have to run for Board of Supervisors.
Thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you again. Having been as representative to the RIFA, I appreciate all that you went through to get us where we are today. It was a long haul. And as the mayor said, we don't have the land, nor do we have the type of location for industrial development, so being a part of this really works well for us. I had just one question. You were talking about possible data centers, and what amount of acreage is usually required for those centers?
Right, so that varies tremendously. But there are some smaller iterations. I mean, like the Amazon ones that are, I think in Enrico or Chesterfield, or, they're very, very large. It takes
Right.
a big footprint. But it could be as small as 20 or 30 acres. We could see one of a scale of that size. I've forgotten the term for the smaller one. Edge data center. So we'll learn from Mr. Grella what our optimal, targets may be, but it could be that small. So we can play in that game.
Edge has a familiar ring to it.
Yeah, that's another presentation for another day.
And I know when I wasn't able to attend the May meeting for RIFA, but I know at the one before, there was a lot of interest by the other jurisdictions involved about additional projects. And I know that was one of your bullet points. So just getting feedback at this point from everyone, and then is the plan to present, make a presentation of possible new projects?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the way that's going to boil down, it'll probably be a conversation among the economic development directors from the communities getting together. And that's certainly something that's going to happen here in the near term. Have each one bring forward ideas for projects that, have come from their communities, and then we'll try to get the top few out there and get it out there for people to take a look at as potentially participating.
So, great, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Noel, for coming and speaking with us. It's exciting to hear about options around data centers, because I'm sure the transmission lines for the solar panels could make it easier for them to just go ahead and open up shop. My only question was based around that, though. I remember when we initially signed into the EV-RIFA, there was talks of the drone facility and unmanned vehicles, and I just was curious where that went.
So that was the original Go Virginia application. This really muddies the waters, but initially had looked at that property as a unmanned systems testing and demonstration facility. And over time, in looking at it, the thought process was, let's not be so rifle shot. Let's open this up for more just light industrial development. However, the property still lends itself for that, and that's something that we still look at. It is Class G uncontrolled airspace, and it could still have a drone, and I'm still talking to a prospect who's interested in it in Hampton Roads for potentially a drone facility or a manufacturing facility out there. So the formal idea of doing that testing facility has kind of been taken off the table, but that idea, I think, could still have some merit out there.
Sure, yeah.
And the other thing about data centers is we've got pretty good access to fiber out there, and there's a company in York County called Metro Fiber that's laid dark fiber all over the area that's in proximity to that site, and that could be another advantage. Plus, a lot of these data centers, they like to say they have a renewable energy source next door, and we may be able to play off of that too from a marketing perspective.
Sure. Well, thank you. That's not to say there weren't other options, but that's good to hear that data center is one that has popped up.
No, I like that idea, but
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Noel, appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Mr. Harrison, thank you for making the jaunt. Okay, takes us now to City Council communications. Does any member of council have anything to share? Okay. You have in your agenda, and it's also online, a schedule of meetings for the rest of May. So if there's any questions, none there? No? Takes us to open forum. I do have 2 speakers cards, and first I have Sharon Scruggs.
Hi, I'm Sharon Scruggs, 119 Woodmere Court in the city, roundabout Woodmere Drive. First, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I want to thank each of you for having obviously listened in all of those forums to the citizens and what their concerns are, because you've each hit on just about every point that we would say, from timing to funding to the improbability and seeming nonsense of having to get from one space to another if you actually live there and are trying to get from one place to another. Living there, I think that there are several things to consider. Traffic has changed quite a bit since they finished the expansion of Route 199. So numbers that they gathered a couple of years ago. Per person, that's 20 minutes of a backup. I've never waited more than 6 minutes to get from College Creek to 199, and sometimes I do have to wait about 3 minutes to get from Walsingham to my street if something has happened up there. That's it. I mean, Northern Virginia people would love to have this problem. The one thing that I have picked up on since this all came up is that apparently sometime in the last few years a regulation was passed in the state that any new intersection or any intersection that is to have a major improvement has to go through the process of innovative intersections and making roundabouts a priority. So I think that one of the things that we're dealing with here is that this is what has been proposed, this is what is in the financial pipeline, but no other alternative is being definitively discussed. So taking one roundabout out or making one light change or whatever is just piecemealing at this, but are we not at a place where we can say, what's plan B? Not the innovative intersection plan, but purchasing a property on the corner that's already for sale to expand the number of lanes there, or whatever it is, something that's not this plan. Would those funds, or any funds, be available in the next 10 years to fund an alternative so that we're not losing the funding opportunity here, but that we could apply it elsewhere? That would be my first question. And my second question, of course, would be, what's the other plan? So, thank you very much. I appreciate that VDOT has gone through so much and would continue to. Don't let 'em. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scruggs. Next speaker's card I have is Mr. Maslin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Some of you may remember the first time I offered city council comments from this lectern. It was about 6 years ago, and that city council had just heard a presentation from experts who stated that the only option for our police station was to renovate and expand it in its current location. At that meeting, I suggested to city council that they ask for other options and pointed out several reasons not to expand the police station at its current location. Fortunately, city council never approved that proposal. Well, I'm back at the lectern to ask city council to consider other VDOT options. An alternate proposal would be more community-focused and actually address traffic safety, reduce congestion within the city, and improve pedestrian and bike safety. So what is wrong with the VDOT pipeline presentation? Obviously, it fails to be responsive to our community needs and respect our community character. This state agency proposes to export its vehicle congestion from the 199 intersection onto Jamestown Road, our city street. VDOT contends that this project will save a few minutes delay on 199 during rush hour and reduce accidents by speeding through the traffic there. Let's look at where this presentation fails our community. VDOT fails to explain how many minutes of delay it will create on our Jamestown Road during years of roundabout construction, as well as after completion. When I asked this question at the previous city council presentation, VDOT said they would speed up the construction by working at night. Really? They did not seem to care that residents actually sleep in those houses close to Jamestown Road. Let's talk about vehicle safety and reducing accidents. Statistics will show that major accidents along 199 are not at these intersections, but rather within several miles west, where we have seen fatalities and vehicles flipped over when flying across the 199 median. The presenters were asked how they propose to reduce those types of accidents. No ideas were offered. Likewise, there was no response when we suggested that traffic safety along the state highway start with traffic enforcement. For a pedestrian and bike-friendly community such as Williamsburg, this proposal creates problems for both walking and biking. This presentation suffers from tunnel vision. By only focusing on expensive construction projects at several intersections, it ignores opportunities to reduce other areas of traffic congestion and increase safety for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. I suggest that the best option is the option not presented. We should take this opportunity to work with our state elected representatives and develop a community-focused proposal, which might include: 1, community-focused benefits which respect our Williamsburg character; 2, cost at a fraction of the $30 to $40 million project; 3, quicker delivery of solutions which reduce congestion and increase safety for everyone. In previous conversations with VDOT, we've suggested looking at areas of improvement such as: A, provide a right-hand turn lane from Compton Drive to Monticello Avenue to reduce the congestion leaving William and Mary; B, provide a right-hand turn lane from Strawberry Plains Road onto John Tyler Highway to reduce the backup there. And C, accelerate the city's plan for a safe bike and walk pathway along Strawberry Plains Road. This is especially important for our students going to and from Berkeley Middle School. Since students living within a mile of the school no longer have school bus service, the current trade-off is between student safety and more parents driving students to Berkeley. This contributes to the already challenging traffic on Strawberry Plains Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maslin.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come forward? That's all the speakers cards I have. Seeing none, I'll close the open forum. I believe we have an item for closed session, Mr. Vice Mayor.
I move to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of discussing one legal matter per subparagraph 7 for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members, consultants, or attorneys pertaining to actual or probable litigation concerning referendums.
Second.
Ms. McKay, excuse me.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire?
Aye.
Okay, we will go into closed sessions. We'll be back after that. Back in open forum or open session. Mr.,
Sorry.
do you have a motion, sir?
I move to approve the certification of a closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia.
Is there a second? Thank you. Ms. McKay?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye. Is
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern Shear?
Aye.
there a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kern Shear?
Aye.
We are adjourned.